Hello, scholars. This week we're going to cover a pattern organization to use for the final presentation of the semester. Now, there are a lot of different patterns of organization, dozens if not hundreds of them that have different merits, but I want to talk to you about one in particular that works really well for people that are trying to persuade their audiences to take action. Um, and of course, our action here is download something to our phone. Um, so we're going to cover what's called Monroe's motivated sequence. This was created by Howard Monroe, who was looking at advertisements to see what advertisements had the most persuasive messages, which ones were most likely to get people to get up off of their couches, out of their chairs, and go out and buy something. And he looked at thousands of advertisements to analyze which ones were the most persuasive, and he talked to people, and he had a bunch of studies set up. So he was looking at print media out of magazines and books and newspapers. He was listening to radio advertisements. He was watching television ads, which was more difficult because he was back in the 70s and there was not a lot of recording equipment available to him. So it was harder for him to set these things up. But he still went through and did all this. And he came up with an idea, a pattern that really seemed to resonate with audiences, that got them up and going, got them to go and do something. And like so many people that come up with ideas and theories and discover animals and, and different objects, he, of course, named it after himself. So we have Monroe's motivated sequence, and this is what we would refer to as an immediate action speech. And we differentiate between a couple of different ways of presenting persuasive messages. We say passive agreement, and we say immediate action. Now, passive agreement is when your audience can't necessarily do something about the problem. So let's say, for example, well, let's say I wanted to talk to you about why sports teams should stop using Native American mascots. With no offense intended to any of you, you're probably not going to be able to change this policy within the National Football League. It's just out of your purvey at this point, and maybe some of you will rise to that point. But I'm not going to ask you to go do something about it because you're not going to call up the New England Patriots owner, Robert Kraft. He's busy with his own legal proceedings in Florida right now, anyways. And you're not going to be able to run for Senate in 2 years and get this thing turned over for the country. So my whole goal would just be getting you to agree with me that something needs to be done, not necessarily for you to go and do something. But Monroe's motivated sequence was all about getting people to do something, to go and buy a car, to change their dish detergent, to starting a workout program. And I'm going to run through a couple of examples for you so that you see how this works through, and then you're going to have a chance to practice it on your own, or at least analyze it for yourself. So Monroe had 5 steps in this pattern, 3 main points, and again, I'm going to go through each one of them twice. And it begins with the same thing we have with any public speaking situation, or really any presentation. We've got to get the audience's attention. So Monroe's introduction step was called the attention. Now, what was interesting about his attention step is sometimes it did and sometimes it didn't, but it doesn't always have to explain what the idea, what the topic, what the message is. The attention step is intended to steer the audience down a particular path, get them thinking about where you want them to go. So perhaps if I'm creating an advertisement for dish detergent, I would start off with a family sitting down to dinner, and somebody looks down at their glass and it's just covered in gook. It just looks terrible, right? And I'm not saying right there, buy Dawn dish detergent. It will take care of your stains. I'm just trying to get people thinking about this same experience that they maybe have had. And for this first example, I'm going to talk to you about planting a tree because we've got Earth Day coming up. So I might not necessarily start off with, hey, I think you should plant a tree. It might start off with something like, hey, look outside. And of course, on my video, I just looked out my window, which does no good for you. But hey, take a look outside, or when you step outside, you all recognize it's spring. We're getting those warmer temperatures. You're seeing the buds in the trees, and pretty soon there's going to be an explosion of green color all across the land. And it makes us feel fresh and alive and happy and vibrant because spring brings life anew. And it's just Right there, I'm just trying to get you oriented on something that has to do with those trees. Uh, the next step in Monroe's motivated sequence is the first main point. So you gathered the audience's attention. Now we need to explain a problem. And Monroe called this the need section of the speech. And I really actually like that nomenclature, need. Because he wasn't saying, hey, there's a problem, look over here. He's saying, there is an issue that needs to be solved. We need to take action. You need to do something about this. And if it's the dish detergent idea, then the family needs to solve that problem, right? But for planting a tree, well, there's a lot of other things that we can talk about that we need to solve. And deforestation is a pretty big problem that you already all know about. But we got to take it a step further. I got to push it further. And I talk about all the hectares of land that are being torn down in the Amazon every year, and how we are destroying native habitat. We're making it difficult for species to survive. We're literally running animals and insects and birds, all sorts of creatures, into extinction by tearing down all this land for farming and cultivation. We're depriving ourselves of potentially life-saving medications because of all these plants that are now disappearing. I want to point you towards Bangladesh, where the Bangladesh rainforest is being torn down so we can plant palm tree farms. And palm tree farms produce palm oil, which is a very common cooking product. You even find it in Girl Scout cookies. I'm not saying you shouldn't go buy Girl Scout cookies, because I'd still go get some for my nieces every year. But the point of the matter is this stuff's everywhere, and we're tearing down natural habitat to go and do this. And Bangladesh is a particularly difficult place because this is the last bastion of the wild orangutan. And when that's gone, they're not going to be in the wild anymore. They're just going to be in zoos. It's not like we can introduce them to a new rainforest because they're going to upset the local ecosystem there. So there's a whole other set of issues. The point here is, though, that Monroe said and wrote, and he's very right. We have to get the audience to a point where we care about the problem. We need an emotional response. We need to be angry or sad. We need to be scared, upset, whatever it is. Like, we need to get us to the point where we want to solve the problem. We're upset about what's happening right now with the status quo, either in our lives or in the world around us. And then Monroe moves on to the second main point, the third step, which is the plan section. Here's your solution. But he called it the satisfaction step, and I like the way he named that too, because it needs to be a plan that satisfies the problem, but also satisfies where we are. Because we're upset, it's time for me to empower you, to give you a simple, satisfying plan that solves that issue. And for my first example, it is plant a tree. That's a pretty simple step. And as we come up here on Earth Day, you know that there's going to be people out in parks all over New England and really the country and the world handing out those little styrofoam cups and paper cups with the trees in them. And all I'm asking you to do is to grab one of those cups, find a place, and put that tree in the ground. I find it interesting that oftentimes when you're watching advertisements, almost always when you're watching advertisements, really, this is the shortest part of Monroe's motivated sequence. They give you the plan and then they immediately move on. And you're going to understand completely why when we get to the next slide. But here's the point I want to make about that. Your plan needs to be simple. It needs to be really easy. If you give us a very complex plan, we're less likely to do it. Like, I don't want to hear the 15 steps that I can take to solving the issue of deforestation, because by the time you get to number 15, I've forgotten the first 12. Our attention span doesn't work that way. But if you stick with that one idea, that one simple thing we can do, and then you reiterate it a couple of times, we're more likely to take that home with us. So here's the thing that really sets Monroe apart. The fourth step, the third main point. He puts in this visualization step, which is an added practicality step. And I'm not saying show people pictures, but of course we're going to be working with PowerPoint, so you can. What I'm saying here is we help the audience to visualize what life will be like if we go and do this thing. So we'll go back to the dishwashing detergent example, where the family had the very ugly dishes at the very beginning. This is the point where you show everybody the clean dishes. Here's what happens if you get Dawn dish detergent and use it. Everything gets better. And for our extended example here about planting a tree, I can talk to you about how much more beautiful the land becomes. How you can go back and if you planted that one tree from Earth Day, you can go check on it all summer long, every single year. If you go and do one of those big trips down the rainforest to plant a bunch of stuff, like we sometimes have set up from the school, well, now you've got a chance to go and check that out. It's a pretty neat thing. And visualization does a lot of things for us. It really does help us understand, like, if we take action, if we satisfy the need that must be solved, well, here's what life will look like, either for us or for the people around us. And then finally, Monroe has this conclusion step, which he calls the call to action. I like that too, where it's just one last step. Like, let me urge you one more time to take action. Go plant that tree. So it's pretty simple. Here's our rundown step, but we don't need to look at that very carefully right now. So here's where you see this on a regular basis, though not so much now when we've kind of reached the Netflix age in streaming video. But you're all familiar with infomercials that come on late at night. And over the winter, maybe you saw one that started something like this. Oh, it's so cold outside. And you see a person that's like huddled inside on their couch and they're freezing. And they go over to the wall to check the thermostat because they're going to turn it up. And then, oh, the heating bill. Oh, the heating bill is so awful. And so we're gathering attention this way because this is probably something that's happened to all of you, where you've been sitting inside on a cold winter night and you thought to yourself, this sucks. So you want to turn the temperature up, but you're also like, oh, crap. I'm not wealthy. so this ad sort of gets us thinking about what can we do to make ourselves a little bit more comfortable and not spend a ton of money. And then it goes into that need section where, okay, so maybe you try and solve the problem of being cold by grabbing a blanket, but what happens if you get hungry and you want to eat something? Well, the blanket, you gotta move yourself around in the blanket to try and hold the food, and holding a cereal bowl underneath of a blanket is kind of really difficult, and it gets slippery, and if you spill milk all over your blanket, you've got to wash the thing. What if you have like kids or nieces, nephews, younger siblings, and they want to come over and hang out with you, or you've got a dog and it jumps up on the couch with you or the bed with you? They always take a little bit of that blanket from you, and so you're more uncomfortable and not as warm as you once were. What if the phone rings, or you have to check something on your Facebook or your Twitter feeds? You've got to make sure that Beyonce hasn't tweeted in the last 10 minutes. And you tear the blanket off of you, and it's just, oh man, everything's just awful, and you need to solve this problem. And heaven forbid you go outside with a blanket, because your life's going to be hell. And then this wonderful infomercial that some of you probably guessed at already goes into their very quick and satisfying solution, which is buy a Snuggie. It's simple, it's easy, operators are standing by right now. And this is such a quick step in Monroe's motivated sequence because, and you all know this, they go immediately into the visualization section. Look at this young gentleman who's working from home in his Snuggie. Perhaps he's at the office or even at school. It's so easy to wear a Snuggie and be comfortable and warm and get your work done. How about this family? The kids can have their own Snuggie. Even the dog gets its own Snuggie. And no one will be able to take the blanket from you. You'll all be comfortable and happy. Hey, hungry? Want to go to the bar? The Snuggie will allow you to do those things. Infomercials are so much about visualization, helping you to see how happy and wonderful life would be if you bought this product. It's almost ridiculous. And as I go through this, and you don't have to send me messages to tell me, but probably 4 or 5, maybe more of you have Snuggies. And maybe you didn't buy those yourselves because they are popular gifts and have been for like the last 20 years, but a lot of you have them, and you've done this in your Snuggies. You've sat like this gentleman who's eating like what looks like pumpkin pie and maybe playing guitar and or gone out just as a joke for fun in your Snuggie to have a pint with your friends at the bar, or a glass of milk at the cookie shop. Infomercials just do this. It's all they're interested in. They're trying to show us how happy we would be. if we tackle this thing. And then that call to action at the end that we're all so familiar with. So, one more time, call us buy the Snuggie. Here's the operator standing by. Here's the phone number. All major credit cards accepted. To children under 18, please contact your parents if you call. But wait, there's more. If you order now, you get a special reading light with your Snuggie, or buy one get one half off. And and then we're there. We just run it on out. So Monroe's does work, and it's a pattern that's been working for a long time. Since people figure out how to persuade other people to go and buy things. I mean, it's probably a pattern that we saw all the way back into the Dark Ages, all the way back into like as soon as there was commerce, people were probably using ideas very close to what Monroe was talking about when he worked through the motivated sequence. And so I do want you to work on this. And it's not just a thing that helps us in public speaking, which it helps us in all sorts of communication. You hear the idea of like the elevator speech where you have 2 minutes to persuade somebody of something. Well, Monroe's can help you do that when you analyze out the needs and wants of your audience, which may be one person, it may be several. If you're in a job interview and somebody asks you to sell them something to show that you have salesmanship skills, well, you have a very simple, easy pattern you can work through very quickly. And as cheesy as sometimes it sounds, it does really work. So Monroe's is kind of our pattern of the day, and we're going to look at this over the rest of the week, and I look forward to seeing what you come up with.